What's up, guys? Now, I didn't want to make this video, mostly because I genuinely enjoy this content creator. His name is Mr.beard. He makes funny, entertaining, well-researched video, except for this one. This is his newest video on an Australian comedian, Isaac Butterfield. Now, I used to listen to Isaac Butterfield a lot. I don't really anymore because his content doesn't really change. Like, the videos aren't bad. It's just like, when you watch someone do the same thing over and over again, eventually it does get kind of boring. But I don't think he has bad content. I just think he needs a change. I think he needs to, do something different. So I haven't watched him in a couple months, at least a couple months. But I genuinely enjoy his content. And I know for a fact that he's not racist, he's not transphobic, he's not homophobic. He might be slightly transphobic, maybe. That's a little debatable. But he's definitely not homophobic. He's kind of smart sometimes. His content is just a little bit childish. It's a little bit childish, but that's not a bad thing. This person, though, Mr.beard, is trying to say that he's fat-phobic, he's transphobic, he's all of these things. And I personally disagree with him. I've already seen the entire video, so that's why I'm making this video. But we're going to go through, not all of his points. It's a 30-minute video, and I don't want to basically steal Mr.beard's entire video for my video. That seems a little messed up. But I'm just going to go over some of the points that I feel the need to actually go over. Let's jump into it.
Okay, I'm going to freak everybody out. I'm going to upset some people, and I enjoy doing that. Female body hair is disgusting.
So, you find female body hair disgusting. The sight of a woman's body hair triggers a feeling of disgust in you. In other words, women's body hair triggers you, which, in my opinion, is a pretty snowflake response to simply seeing hair. Let's talk about the history of women shaving their underarms.
Alright, this section mainly annoys me only because Isaac's point has nothing to do with what Mr.beard says in this section. Isaac was just saying, I don't like women's body hair. I think it's gross. That's called a preference. And he's about to go in about how shaving became a big thing back in shaving like women's body hair became a big thing in like the mid 1900s, when like Gillette razor wanted to up its profit margin because it wanted to make money, obviously. So they made campaigns about how women should shave their entire bodies. That does not change someone's opinion, though. Like, he might say, like, because he does say later, he's like, oh, Isaac's opinion is essentially based on a marketing campaign by Gillette. And that might be true. That might be correct. And that might be why most guys are not a fan of female body hair. But that doesn't change the fact that they're just not into it. If they don't like it, they don't like it. Isaac shouldn't have been lambasted for just making a TikTok saying that he finds female body hair disgusting. Is it a little much? Is it a little bit childish for people to hate female body hair to the point where they feel the need to say it? Yeah, it's a little bit childish. But it's honestly no big deal. It's just a preference.
I'm talking about, like, a couple of days of growth of hair. Who gives a shit, right? Everyone's got hair. I'm talking about the chicks that have the big hairy bushes and think they're changing the world. They're the chicks I'm talking about. The ones that think they're defeating the patriarchy by growing fucking moss under their arms. No one gives a shit, love. You're not achieving shit.
Isaac will regularly make very inflammatory statements.
Female body hair is disgusting.
But then once he gets backlash, he'll walk the statement back to make himself seem more reasonable. I wasn't saying that all women's body hair is disgusting just when women grow too much of it, or when they think that growing it destroys the patriarchy.
This is not walking it back. Yes, I mean, if you want to go by the definition of what walking it back would be, which, to be fair, walking it back doesn't have an official definition. It's not like a proper term. It's more of a colloquialism. But when someone walks something back, if someone says, oh, they walked back their point, it's usually like, you know, the implication is like, this is what they said their point was, but then as soon as they got backlash, they made it less extreme so that they can hopefully get less backlash. That's not what Isaac was doing. If I don't like body hair, which I personally don't really give a heck about body hair, on women at least, men body hair is kind of gross. But generally speaking, if I have a problem with someone's body hair and I don't like body hair, and I decide that I want to make a TikTok letting people know I don't like women's body hair, I'm just going to say, I don't like women's body hair. All that means is that you didn't fully explain yourself. It's like someone saying, you know, I don't think Sonic can move at light speed, and then not like elaborating on that. Obviously they're wrong. If you play the games, if you read the comics, they're not correct. But if he then comes out and is just like, oh, I didn't specify, I don't think that Sonic is light speed in the TV show, specifically the Sonic Boom TV show, he would be right. He has shown no light speed feats in that show. Or maybe he was being a little bit more general in a different way. He was saying, like, yes, there have been a few light speed feats of Sonic, but I don't feel like it's consistent enough to say Sonic is light speed, especially since there's only like 3 games where he ever does that. Now, that point, you know, you can either agree with that point or disagree with that point, but I wouldn't say that's walking it back. I would say that's further explaining what you mean.
Also posts a lot of videos that rely on dishonest clickbait in order to get views. Like this video where he claims in the title that a woman was killed in a Nikocado avocado video, but when you actually watch the video, there is no evidence that any woman was actually killed. Or this video that implies that that vegan teacher has died, but the video is actually just about Isaac saying that he doesn't want to talk about her anymore. Everyone on YouTube has to engage in some level of clickbait in order to get views, but it is not okay to be intentionally dishonest in your titles and thumbnails, especially if you're making false claims that people have.
Now, this section of clickbait is actually pretty good on Mr.beard's side. I don't generally look at the title of videos of people that I watch. I don't usually look at them because, to me, I like to be a little bit surprised. Maybe I'll look at, like, the first word, and, like, if that catches my attention, I'll watch it. So the fact that, like, he's making this kind of clickbait, I probably didn't notice it because I don't really pay attention to the titles. But yeah, that's a little messed up. It's a little messed up to have clickbait like that. Is it evil? Is it like a terrible thing to do? No, and I don't really think Mr. Beard's making the point that it's evil or that it's like a genuinely horrible thing to do. But I do think that, like, he shouldn't do that. He should be a little bit more responsible with what he does.
Died. Next, let's look at his recent video, 10 Reasons Woke Women Hate Men.
This is the most interesting section because, like, this section is probably going to be the longest part that I actually talk about because a lot of these points are based on things that actually happened. Like, you're going to see, and I'm going to explain each one when they happen, but nearly every single point that he mentions is based on something that has happened, famously happened in the internet zeitgeist. So we're just gonna watch it real quick, and I'm gonna explain to you every single point.
Number 10, toxic masculinity. If there has been a buzzword over the past 5 years or so, toxic masculinity has to be up there with some of the greats. By definition, it is a set of attitudes and ways of behaving stereotypically associated with or expected of men, regarded as having a negative impact on men and society as a whole. So it's basically whatever men do. That is toxic masculinity. Anything that's bad that a man does is toxic masculinity. Anything bad that a female does is not toxic femininity. It is brave, powerful, wonderful, and fantastic. Yay.
When have feminists ever claimed that women can't be toxic? No feminist on the entire planet believes that female empowerment means that women can just be as toxic as they want to be and go around committing whatever crimes they want to without being held responsible.
For this point, he goes over this mindset that a lot of people on like Twitter have, where they'll look at someone, at a man doing something bad, like a man being rude to his girlfriend, or a man, stealing, or a man beating someone up, and they'll be like, oh, that's because of toxic masculinity. While a lot of times they'll look at a woman who's like, oh, I chopped my husband's dick off because he wanted a divorce. Or, oh, I divorced my husband because, he wasn't a fan of me hanging out with all of my ex-boyfriends. And they'll be like, oh, that was so, proud of you. I'm so proud of you. He shouldn't be like that. He shouldn't do this. He shouldn't do that. Is that all women? No. But it's enough to be noticeable. It's enough to where a lot of people who are savvy with the internet or who use Twitter see this. People wouldn't use it as a point if it wasn't at least somewhat common. And that's the biggest problem, is that these things are decently common enough to where it's a problem. Now, it's not every woman. I'm making that extra clear. It isn't every woman. But it also isn't every man. It's not a toxic masculinity. It's a toxic person.
Everything that dudes do is deemed toxic masculinity. When Will Smith the other week slapped Chris Rock because Will Smith is a big old pussy, that was not to... You can't blame Will Smith for that. You blame toxic masculinity.
Huh? No one is blaming toxic masculinity. They're blaming Will Smith for exhibiting toxic masculinity. Just like if someone commits murder, we don't blame murder, we blame the person for committing.
This just goes further into the point, because what Isaac Butterfield is saying, he's not saying that people are literally blaming the concept of toxic masculinity. He's saying that, oh, Will Smith acted that way because it is something endemic to men. He's saying Will Smith acted that way because he is a man, and toxic masculinity is something that men exhibit. I completely disagree with this, and so does Isaac Butterfield, because women will say that men doing something bad is because of their personal toxic masculinity, when in reality, it's just because they are aggressive. That's an aggressive person. Wow, if the script was flipped, and a woman, like, let's say, I don't know, fudging, Jennifer McCarthy went up on the stage and slapped the hell out of, Megan Fox, no one would be like, oh, that's such toxic femininity. They would instead say, like, oh, I'm so proud of you, stand up for your man, this, that, and the fourth, good job. And that is a common thing. The problem isn't that it happens. The problem is the fact that, like, it's common for women to be praised for doing things that men get punished for. And that's the huge problem with toxic masculinity, is that toxic masculinity doesn't really exist. Like, it does in the sense that men do things that people associate with toxic masculinity, but it doesn't in the sense that what they associate with toxic masculinity isn't correct. It's just that person being toxic.
Murder. What the fuck are you talking about?
There are examples of things that you could put under the label of toxic masculinity. The whole idea that men can't have emotions, men can't cry, men shouldn't look after the kids. That's the woman's job. That's bullshit. That's garbage. It's toxic. Maybe we shouldn't blame all men for this. Maybe we should blame the rotten eggs that are the ones that are living their lives like this.
No one is blaming all men. If you actually read the definition that you showed on screen, you would see that toxic masculinity is a set of stereotypes typically associated with the toxic elements of masculinity.
This is another problem. Isaac Butterfield says you should blame individuals, not the whole batch. And Mr.beard tries to say, no one's blaming all men. That doesn't happen. When he's completely wrong. There is a whole movement called Blame All Men. It died pretty quickly. It was very short-lived. But there was a whole thing about blame all men. There was the kill all men. It's always all men. Usually, yes, they'll blame the one person, but then everyone will be like, yes, blame that one person, but it's because of all the men around them. It's about the society that all men built that caused that. And that's the problem, is that the toxic person is the toxic person. The toxic person isn't the society that built the toxic person. Because not everyone in that society is like that.
9. Slut shaming. What does slut shaming mean? It is the action or fact of stigmatizing a woman for engaging in behavior judged to be promiscuous or sexually provocative. I think the reason that society looks down on women who have slept with a lot of people or are easy in this situation is because it's so simple for them to get sex. For a man to get a lot of sex, he's got to be funny, intelligent, he's got to be all these things, he's got to be muscular, he's got to be good looking. For a lady to get sex, all she has to do is just slightly open her fucking legs.
I have never understood this argument. What you're saying is that it's easy for women to get sex because men usually want sex, and it's not easy for men to get sex because women usually don't want sex. So, if men are the ones who usually want sex, then what you're saying is, by default, men are sluts. And if women usually don't want sex, then by default, women aren't sluts. But you're saying it makes sense to shame a woman when she decides to want sex as much as men want sex?
I feel like Mr.beard missed his point here. His point is that society tends to stigmatize women as sluts because of the fact that women don't usually want sex. And when they do, it is out of the ordinary. So that's why it gets stigmatized. Because society will stigmatize nearly anything that is considered to be out of the ordinary. So when they say that, a woman is a slut, it's not because necessarily that she wants sex. It's because she wants sex more often than the common or stereotypical woman wants sex. Now, I don't agree with this. I think this is bad. And based on the clip that Mr.beard shows in this video, it doesn't seem like Mr. Butterfield is against the idea of it either. He doesn't really say if he's for or against slut shaming, at all. I don't believe you should be. I feel like anyone should be allowed to have as much sex as they want, as long as they aren't betraying their own values or are emotionally hurting themselves in the process. But Butterfield's point is that people stigmatize sluts because it's out of the ordinary, not because women are suddenly wanting sex as much as men want sex. That doesn't even make sense.
Woke women believe that all men are dangerous. I've already touched on this already in this video, but I feel it is important to really highlight it. A generation of young women between the ages of 14 to 30, maybe even a little bit older, are learning that not only are men dangerous, that they should be scared of them at all times and avoid them at all costs.
The vast majority of women don't actually believe that all men are dangerous. When they say this, they are exaggerating. However, the reason they say this is because of statistics. Around 90% of homicides are committed by men. Men make up 90% of prison population.
I don't completely disagree with this point. Yes, a lot of women are just exaggerating, and yes, a lot of the time, the women the women saying this are talking about the fact that most murders are caused by men. But what's interesting about that is that although most murders are caused by men, most murders also happen to men. Now, I don't believe that it's insane to think that someone is inherently dangerous. I believe strangers are inherently dangerous because there is always that percentage of a chance that that person is a murderer, that person's a psychopath, there's something up with that person. So I inherently have at least a small distrust toward most strangers. But my problem is when that distrust is pointed directly at men. Because they'll look at men and be like, you guys tend to cause the most amount of murders, so I'm going to keep my distance away from you. And I think that's unfair to men that have never committed murder or have no plans to commit a murder. I believe that's extremely unfair. But I do believe that women should be scared of men, just as I believe women should be scared of women. Because all people could be dangerous. Now, I don't get the idea of like I'm not a huge fan of what Isaac says in this, saying that like women are scared of men and that's why woke women don't like men. It's a little confusing, but I can kind of see where he's getting at, because a lot of women will shit on men because of the fact that men are statistically more dangerous than women, and that is kind of unfair. But I don't know, the logic doesn't really track for me, so I don't have too many bad things to say about this. All I'm saying is that I believe mindset wise it doesn't make sense to be only afraid of men, when in reality I believe all strangers are inherently dangerous.
90% of rapists are men, and 1 in 6 women will be the victim of an attempted or completed rape in their lifetime.
So this is something that's infuriated me for the longest time. The 1 in 6 or the 1 in 5 women will be raped. That statistic is extremely, 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 extremely overblown. I just now looked into the specific source that he cites here, and he says that 1 in 6 women will be raped or will have a rape attempt on them throughout their life. First of all, this statistic specifically comes from a college campus, from college campuses, and I found a specific section where it says from 2005, the research was done from 2005 to 2014. And it says 33% of the confirmed rapes were known as sexual assault victimizations. Meaning that 33% of the completed rapes in this statistic were not rape. They were sexual assaults. Now, granted, sexual assault is bad. Sexual assault is still terrible and can be extremely traumatizing. But it's so disingenuous to look at sexual assault, which could be as simple as someone grabbed your boob and ran, and can be as bad as like someone sticking their fingers inside of you, but not going any further than that. But to classify that huge range of like a squeeze and run to, fingers inside as rape is, in my opinion, extremely disingenuous, and that's 30% of that statistic. And then for attempted rape or sexual assault, it says it's nearly 50% of the ones that were considered attempted were attempted sexual assaults or rapes. Now, my other problem with that is that how do you attempt a sexual assault without finishing a sexual assault? Attempting a sexual assault sounds something along the lines of like they came at you with with intent to do something but never succeeded. Now, attempted rape could actually be classified noticeably. Like if they got you in a situation where they were clearly trying to rape you, that is something I can see. But I'm not sure how you would classify an attempted sexual assault. So I'm not going to say anything about that 50%. That could be 100% legit and understandable. Now, it says here that 18%, or about 1 in 5, were verbal threats of rape and assault. Meaning in this 1 out of 6 women, 18% of this statistic were threats of sexual assault. That is 20%. That's almost 20%. They said it's 18% of them. Which is so crazy to me, because if you look at the statistic of 1 in 6, it makes it sound way worse than it actually is. I'm going to run the numbers real quick. Let me run the numbers. And so I can tell you what percent of these women have actually been sexually assaulted or raped. So I just ran the numbers. Now these numbers are not perfect, obviously. I'm literally doing them off the top of my head based off of the information that was given to me here. If I thought about it a lot more, the numbers might be different than what I actually have. But for specifically only completed rapes and sexual assaults, completed ones, as in they were confirmed to be raped and sexually assaulted, it's about 30%. It's about 30% of the 1 in 6 were officially raped and sexually assaulted. Rape or sexually assaulted. Now, the next one I calculated for was people that were successfully or attempted sexual assaulted, which just means like if you don't account for threats to be considered an attempt or a successful sexual assault. That is 82% of the 1 in 6 statistic, which would make it noticeably less. And then the final one I calculated were just people that were officially raped. Just raped, not including sexually assaulted or attempted at rape. So the people that were raped or attempted at rape is 60% of the 1 in 6. That's almost half as likely, meaning you're looking at more of like a 1 in 12 women statistic will be raped or potentially raped, which, although is still bad, that's still a really bad statistic, is way more realistic than what they have here. Or if you don't want to go with that statistic and instead just the ones that were raped or attempted raped or sexually assaulted or attempted sexually assaulted, that is 82% of them. Which, you know, if we say that's about 80, it's like 1 in 9. It's like 1 in 9 people, maybe like 1 in 10. I'm doing this math on top of my head. I'm not using the calculator for this one. Which is also still bad. But when you say it's 1 in 6, it makes it the most scariest it could possibly be. Which is why I despise this statistic, because it's not correct enough. They don't differentiate between verbal threats, attempted sexual assaults, and full-on rapes. And that is the problem to me, is the fact that there is not enough differentiation between this statistic. Also, the statistic was based off of college campuses. So this is women that go to college campuses, based off of my interpretation, have about a 1 in 9 or a 1 in 10 chance of being attempted to be raped or successfully raped or sexually assaulted. And that's just my problem with this. This didn't really have anything to do with Butterfield in particular, but I just felt the need to vent because this shit's ridiculous. He goes on a pretty dumb and infuriating rant about the patriarchy, saying that, like, oh, historically, most high-end jobs are taken up by men and they're used to put down women. That is true, technically, you're right, but why are we worried about people that did stuff all the way back then? What about the people now? People are still sometimes making legislation that go against women. So how about we just worry about those things happening today? Like, I can understand going back like maybe 20 years. But if you're going back to like the 1940s to make your point about why the patriarchy sucks today, it's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous thing to do.
Number 5, and this is a great one and a great reason to hate men, male feminists. The wolf in sheep's clothing. Basically, what a male feminist is a predator hiding in camouflage looking to pounce. The only reason male feminists exist is to fuck chicks. This is it. The only reason. If you know a guy who says he's a male feminist, he's trying to fuck you.
This is the most ridiculous point that Isaac makes. This is honestly a very fudging stupid point, saying that male feminists are inherently predatory. That's messed up. I don't consider myself a male feminist, or a feminist in general, or a female feminist. I just don't use labels. Labels are dumb. But to say that, like, male feminists are inherently dangerous is ridiculous. It's genuinely ridiculous for him to say.
Because Vosh made a joke that Isaac is a child groomer.
Tick tock.
All right, can we just agree that anyone who talks like this is probably a groomer? This groomer, I'm fair saying it, yeah. This guy probably, like, fucks kids.
Isaac was not very happy about this.
To go out there and call someone the worst thing in the world, a pedophile or a child groomer, is fucking outrageous, cunt. Are you serious? It is profoundly rude and unjust. Absolutely zero evidence. Fuck this cunt to the moon. Fuck you to the moon, Vosh. I have no more time for you.
Now, I completely agree that it was incredibly stupid for Vosh to joke that Isaac is a child groomer. I don't think you should ever make jokes about serious accusations like this. However, I find it extremely hypocritical that Isaac acted all offended about being called a predator, but later he accused all male feminists of being...
This point is dumb and stupid. Isaac is upset because he's being called a pedophile. A pedophile. Literally one of the worst things that you could be accused of being. I would be enraged at someone that attempted to call me a pedophile. In seriousness. Jokes are a little bit different, but in seriousness, I would be very upset about someone accusing me of being a pedophile. While what Isaac did wasn't call them a predator as in a child molester. They called them a predator as in they are a wolves in sheep clothing. They want to be feminists in order to get into women's pants. Now, that is predatory, but it doesn't actually make them like an official pedophile. There is a huge difference in the use of the word pedophile here. I mean, a huge difference in the use of the word predator here. One of them is used as a child molester or a child groomer, and the other one is used to say this is an opportunistic person who is trying to find a way to get sex by manipulating people's perspectives of himself.
Phobic. Isaac made a video commenting on the situation, and I also found many of his responses to this extremely hypocritical. First, he says that he respects J.K. Rowling for speaking out about her beliefs.
J.K. Rowling, whether you agree or disagree with her, she has the balls, the fanny flaps to go out there and talk about what she genuinely believes. And you have to respect that, whether you believe it or not, whether you agree with her or not. If she goes out there and talks about what she genuinely believes, that's some good shit.
So, even if people disagree with J.K. Rowling, they need to respect her because she spoke out about what she.
I do kind of believe. I mean, I do agree with Mr. Beard's point here. What Isaac said was extremely stupid. Yeah, it is kind of brave to come out with your political beliefs. You're right that it is kind of brave, but like, no one's questioning whether or not J.K. Rowling is brave. They're saying her points are stupid, which is inherently the point of it. It's kind of ridiculous to not do that. I don't know. I can't agree with Isaac's mindset here. I don't know if he actually agrees with her transphobia. I would hope not, but I don't know if he actually does, because he did used to make a lot of comments being like, oh, you know, you can't have a man that looks like you can't have a trans woman that looks exactly like a man in every way show up into a female bathroom, because that's, you know, endangering women, which I do personally agree with. I believe that you should be going to the male bathroom until you are, you know, until you've reached a certain threshold of seeming like a woman. I don't know where that threshold is, and there would probably be a lot of arguments as to where that threshold should be. But I personally believe, like, if you are commonly considered a woman, if you fit, you know, certain feminine characteristics, then yeah, you can go into the female bathroom. But obviously, I don't know. I can't legislate that. I can't tell you for sure that's how it should be. But I am saying that, like, I don't know. He doesn't seem transphobic. He seems a little bit ignorant on the concept of trans people, but he doesn't seem like actually transphobic at all. I'm not going to cover the rest of this video. It's mostly Vosh stuff, and like, it's all like, oh, you either like kind of, you know, go with it or you kind of don't. I'm not really going to fight him on it. Personally, I think like the rest of this video is fine. I don't perfectly agree with it 100%, but I think it's fine enough. But my biggest point is, Mr. Beard, did you really watch Isaac Butterfield? Did you listen to what he said? And if you did do that, did you come into it with a bad image of him already in your mind? Because that's how it feels when I'm watching this. It feels like you're taking the worst interpretation of everything that he says. And I'm not a fan of that. I call that out whenever I see that in different videos, even from people that I like. It annoys me when people are in like an argument, or people are commenting on someone else's video and they decide to throw that stuff out there, because it feels like a straw man. It's ridiculous. And Mr. Beard, I love you. Please continue, you know, making the rest of your videos. But this one was just not it, Chief. This one was not it.